Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. वालेकुम अस्सलाम। बेटा असल में डिपार्टमेंट में देर हो गई मुझे। वजह ये थी कि मेरा सिस्टम जो है वो काम नहीं कर रहा था। सो दैट वाज द बेसिक रीज़न। आई जस्ट गॉट इट करेक्टेड एंड नाउ आई एम बैक। सो can you see this model? Okay. Now this is basically systems model of organizational functions. Now if you start from the top left, we have got governmental, we said external environment of business. Now what are the external environment? It is governmental regulations, technology introduction, labor market, and at the bottom, you have got societal concern, competition, and HR state of the art, right? Now, getting to the internal side, we have got on the left side, the strategic management system, and on the right side, we have got goals. The goals are productivity, maybe morale, profit. So we said profit is, of course, the main objective of business that we have. Now in the center, we have got human resource management system, which is connected with double-headed arrows called human resource information system. And if you look at the internal environment, that is productivity, goals and strategic management system, they are constantly providing feedback to human resource management and also receiving feedback, and therefore we have got double-headed arrows. Similarly, we also see that the strategic management and goals are interrelated. Let us start with the top one before we get to the center. In the human resource management system, we said we have planning, we have staffing, we have training and development, performance management system, compensation and benefits, and quality of work life. This is said to be what the system has defined as the HR management system. Now, governmental regulation, as we all know, is is an external environmental factor and has got massive impact on the HR policies. Right from the beginning, we find that if you remember what we said earlier, that in the first and second phase, we're talking about regulatory frameworks. And if you look at India, Indian system has not been working voluntarily, so much so it has been working with the help of regulations. So we find after 1920s, we have Trade Unions Act being passed in the 20s, that was in 29. Indian Trade Union Act, which later on was named as Trade Unions Act. Then we have got 1946, prior to independence, the regulation called Standing Orders Act, which is basically entitled Employment, the Standing Orders Act is there. Then we have got third act immediately after independence. We had the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947. Right? Because 46 Act was Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act. Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act. 47 is Industrial Disputes Act. Then it is followed immediately in 1948 by the Factories Act that we have already covered in the fifth unit, a part of it in terms of working conditions and welfare, that is part of it. Then we also find that as we proceed, in 1961, Maternity Benefits Act was passed, which is an important enactment then. Further, when VP Singh government was there, they passed an act for the reservation of other backward classes. And further, what we find that before that SC/ST Act was already there, then came further amendments, and when we said that the creamy layer and other things were being removed, but then we also find that 10% reservation has further been added. So all these factors, all these regulations are having a direct impact on the HR policies, and thereby it is a challenge for the HR professionals, HR management, as to how they are going to incorporate and work in line with the legislations which are already there. And then, of course, we also have got that Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Wages Act, so on and so forth. Then you look at the second one, where we talk about this particular point we are referring to here. This is basically the technology. Technology introduction is related to change management. That is, organizations cannot survive for very long without bringing in changes. And therefore, what we notice that as and when new technology is introduced, that throws a challenge for the human resource management system as well. For example, if you look at way back when computerization started coming into business, I don't know if you are aware that the first computer that was started in commercial organization was by the Citibank of New York for clearance of checks. Prior to that, computer was utilized for the payroll calculation of the military, but that was not in the governmental organization. That too was in US. In India, during the 60s, it was Bhabha who tried an attempt to build an Indianized computer system when IBM was ruling the world. But before Bhabha could make any computer, he died in plane crash and the system was halted. It was during the late 60s that the government of India decided to buy a mainframe system, because we all know there were different types of systems are there. There are mainframes, there are mini computers, there are microcomputers which are there. And then we, of course, talk about supercomputers which have been added. It was mainframe computer, which was of a size of a building, which could easily be that of a size with a building on a single story building on a 500 square yards of land. Now, such large was the computer, first computers, which was mainframe computers that was being built. But when they started saying that this computer is going to be installed in the financial sector, that was the State Bank of India and Life Insurance Corporation of India, there was massive strikes and agitations by them, as a result of which
the mainframe computer was not introduced in any of the financial institutions. It was during the mid 80s that Rangarajan became Deputy Chairman Reserve Bank of India. Now, and he was given the task, he was a professor at IIM Ahmedabad. He was given the task of computerization of financial sector. He submitted his report that initially the banks could be computerized, but it will only be the back office which will be front office which will be computerized first. But there was a revolt, and therefore they started talking about computerization of back office only. In 1987, an agreement was done between Bank Employees Association and Bank Employers Association, which agreed for the introduction of computers in the back office, because by that time the PCs came into play. It was also the same time when this ATM, automated teller machine, was also being introduced in India, and the first teller machine called ATM was introduced in the State Bank of India on Parliamentary Street branch. But it was not made available to public at non-working hours, because it was installed inside the computer, bank branch, with 3 layers of security that nobody could break and loot the amount which is being put in the ATMs. So it was more like a showpiece rather than for the ease of the customers. But once an agreement took place in 87, in 1989, we find that computers were introduced in back offices of the major banks in India. The minute it was introduced in the back office, the women folks went on strike. They went on strike saying that the computers, the PCs, create radiation and it affects the fetus. Therefore, those females who are in the family way, their fetus will be deformed. They will have stillbirths and deformed children born, and therefore they will not use computers. Again, there was an agreement between the employers and employees, the female employees, and they said that the day female employee gets to know about their pregnancy, they can give a notice, and from that date, they can go on leave. They will not lose their jobs. Number one guarantee. Number two guarantee was that they can include the time of maternity leave with the childbirth and can return after that. The third thing, that they will also be getting the 2 advance increments that was given in 1987. They went one step further. They also made the employers agree that their seniority for the period of leave will also be counted as if they were on duty. And with these conditions, the female workforce joined back the organization and started functioning. In 1992, there was another agreement when the employers started the introduction of ATM on a large scale. There was a revolt, and then an agreement took place between the employer and employee for the front office to be computerized, and these people were given not advance increment. Along with that, they were also given advance promotions, those who will start using computers in the front office. This was This is one thing as far as technology introduction is concerned. I'm not talking about other technology because every technology has got an impact. Now, once this computerization is started, what we find that at that point of time, per annum, about 45,000 people were employed every year in the banks in India, right? But in 1989, within 2 years of the introduction of computers in the back office, the new entrant got reduced from 45,000 per annum to 5,000 per annum. That means there was a job loss of the entry level people of as many as 40,000 people, which was a very, very large number. And we also find that these job losses of the new entrant is one case. We found that there were redundancies in the organization. And mostly this redundancy was that those people who were working on a particular job that job was no longer available, and therefore they were either to face worker redundancy or retrain themselves to do the new job within the bank. As per the agreement, they said they were promised that they will not lose their jobs, and therefore they were trained in the use of new technology. This training became a big challenge for the human resource management people as to how are they going to train them, because the bankers themselves were not knowing about the system, and therefore external agencies were hired. There were people who were hired from outside to work in the bank and train the bank employee who were desirous of receiving training and getting an advanced promotion, right? But retaining those employees who were experts in the areas of computer was very, very difficult. What we found that the case of Bank of Baroda, NSBI, the chief of the computer training left their jobs in between within 2 years because they found much lucrative job offers from the Gulf countries, and therefore those computer experts left, and therefore these people were left in lurch. What organization started thinking that if they could train the trainers within the organization, it will be easier. So they hired the agencies, got options from the employee who wanted to become a trainer, and then train them so that they in turn will train the employee in the use of computerization. Now, this led to the establishment of a new department. Now, that new department that we talk about was known as CPPD, Computer Policy and Planning Department, which used to be headed by a person of the level of Assistant General Manager. So what we notice that a parallel organization within the organizational structure was being brought in. We further find that this created another set of problems. Those who opted for the department of CPPD, where the highest post was that of AGM, therefore their growth was not there beyond. Therefore, a deputation system started from the organization that a person who would serve the position of AGM can be further promoted to DGM in other areas with the experience of a maximum 5 years in the area of CPPD as well. So with that, this problem was being solved. So what we in turn are saying that this new section got started, which had to be manned, and they had to interact with other employees of the organization. we further find that those people who were working in other areas, the elder generation, they started resisting the use of computerization, and thereby they did not trust the data that was provided to them by the CPPD or by the computer department, in other words, and they used to have manual calculations being made. So all these things were basically having an impact on the employment. Further, we find that these people, you know, those 5,500 5,000 employment that was there for the new entrant, and promotional avenues were not there. So the banks have got to, or financial sectors have got to increase their portfolio. Normally during the period of early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, there used to be 4 to 5 products in the portfolio of the banks. Soon with the introduction of computer, this portfolio started increasing, and today we have almost 30 different products within the portfolio of a bank. That led to an increase in the demand for people, and employment in the short run, of course, decreased, but in the long run, it started keeping up and computerize those people who were coming into business. The HR challenge was there. So that is having an impact on the HR. Similarly, we talk about the labor market. See, labor market, when we talk about, we are basically talking about the supply and demand that is there. Now, supply and demand in India is very, very typical in terms of banking personnel or any other personnel, because we have employment, unemployment situation staying at the same time. There is shortage of quality graduates, whereas there are, abundance of under quality or less qualified, under quality graduates at the same time. So if you look at even in the management profession, this employment unemployment situation is existing in the organizations. So IIM graduates are in short supply for the industry, or premier institution graduates are in less supply for the institutions, whereas C grade institutions or ungraded institutions are in large number and supplying large number of graduates. So we are finding that there is over employment and there is underemployment and there is a balance as well. All three scenarios are there in Indian market, which HR have got to deal with. So this supply and demand had to be balanced. Initially, in order to balance this computerization process, the universities was ordered by the government to start courses of MCA during the period of 80s. But today, if you look at, or engineering colleges were asked to start computer engineering. But soon there was a proliferation of these computer graduates, and today only hardcore graduates from these areas are finding, full employment. Others are underemployed in the industry as well. So that is where supply and demand had to be balanced. Now coming down to the societal concern that is there, once the organizations gets established, how much are they caring for society? The societal concern, we all know, an act has also been passed for the organizations making profit to invest 3% in social, for the social cause which is there. But social concern is basically training these people and providing them employment, that is also there. And there are pressure groups in the society which is pressurizing the government for the reservation of employee, is also one of the societal concerns that we have. Then comes the competition. Now, if one competitor introduces newer method, if they bring in new technology, or they bring in new products in the line, their competitor have to follow suit. or if they are having new policies in the organization, others will be following suit. If there is an increase in the salary done by one individual, that will have an impact on other organizations as well. And that has been happening right from the beginning. I tell you the example of Goodyear tires and Modi Stone during the period of 1983, 82, 83, started manufacturing radial tires. It took over Modi Stone and started manufacturing radial tires. And since they expanded their business portfolio, they expanded their production. Goodyear Tire, which was a leader at that point of time, their employee started leaving them and joining Modi Stone and Modi Tires. Similar was the case with Dunlop. Similar was the case with Seat Tires. Similar was the case with Apollo Tires. So what we find that a change that was brought in by Modi's had changed by other organizations as well, and that was having an impact on HR. That was a retention of those employees, or so that organization can keep functioning. So for anything, the competitor has got an impact on the policies of the organization, be that recruitment policy, training policy, salaries, and so on and so forth. And then comes HR state of the art. If the change is occurring anywhere in the world, it has become a global village. And in the global village, a change will also have an impact on the HR policy across the world. And that is why we are saying that anything new that has come up in terms of HR state of the art will also be having an impact on the organizations. They will have to embrace those changes, otherwise they will fail, right? Now coming to the strategic management system, which is interacting with the goals. It is the top management which decides upon the course of action, and the goals is also being decided by them, which has to interact with the human resource management system on a constant basis. And a database management system has to be prepared. Initially in India, we had Kale Khan consultant, which built up, manpower inventory system. But later on, we found that new softwares were being developed by the organizations, and they developed a whole soul human resource information system, which is maintaining the data within the organization to be utilized in terms of needs, and is also maintaining it for different purposes and policy things. And therefore, it has become a strategic function as such that we are encountering today, right? So that is as far as your human resource, the thing called systems model of organizational functions. Let us go back to the evolution of human resource functions in India that we were talking about yesterday. I think I have showed this, explained this slide to you in detail when we said beginning of HR evolution was in 1920s and 30s, and during the 2020s, it is promising philosophical human values, and it's an executive function. I've already provided transparencies to all of you. I hope you have received that. It was Alam Rizwan who has distributed that on my behalf. So if you look at the history of HR in India, we say that it is very, very scattered, and
many informal ways on implementation was being followed. In 1920s, due to the recommendation of SS Bengali under the title of Royal Commission in 1931, labor welfare officers has been employed in every manufacturing unit in India. It was Tata Steel which informally started human resource management practices in the name of personnel policy practices in their organization under the title of Administration and Vigilance Department. In 1948, first in charge President of India approached for the Factory Act and stipulated working hours for female and teenage workers and security about female worker that was being done. Soon, two gentlemen called T.V. Rao, Professor T.V. Rao and Professor Uday Parikh. Uday Parikh is no more, but T.V. Rao is still alive. They started to implement the personnel management in Indian Institute of Personnel Management, that is called IIPM, and National Institute of Labor Management were set up with the efforts of these two individuals. During the 1970s, there was shift in professional values and new technologies, HR challenges, and HRD was discussed. In 1980s, IIPM and NILM merged to form National Institute of Personnel Management, NIPM. During the 1990s, emphasis shifted to human values and productivity through people. So if you look at the qualities of HR managers, it was to have knowledge, intelligence, communication skills, objectivity and fairness, leadership and motivational qualities, emotional maturity, and empathy. So that was what we talked about in terms of this particular Right. Is it visible?
Yeah. Human resource management in changing environment, global village, and its implication
That is there. See, what we find that in the era of globalization
that we are still going through right from the time of 1991, thanks to Manmohan Singh. We have been talking about global think and local needs, which some people fondly call as the glocal management of HR. Therefore, the emergence of new scientific way of manage people uh, came up, and this gave birth to a new term called human resource management. Right now, human resource management is a buzzword for people development strategy and partnership policies, which we call SPP, which is the key to organizational success and sustainability. This is what Barry Smith has started saying, that people are the most important asset. And one of the most underlying factor is that human capital is very much powerful and valuable. And therefore, we started talking about human asset being the most important asset that any organization has got. This is what Barry Smith had said. But there is a gentleman called Kinoy. He branded that it is nothing but a case of wolf in sheep's clothing, because it is the new term which is more fashionable than the previously known personnel management. And the former Ministry of Labor has supported it. But argument that HR is a new name for personnel management can be seen in many ways, especially when some quoter says that it is nothing but an old wine wrapped up in new bottle. In fact, there are many differences between the two. It was Torrington Hall and Hall in their book called Personnel Management, a new approach, made it clear that there are substantive differences between human resource management and personnel management. Right? Now, the argument whether HR is a new name or a personnel can be seen in many ways. Sorry, this is repetition. Right. They have arguably strongly stated that personnel management is more focused on people, that is people management, whereas human resource management is focused on more and more on people development rather than people management. So one is managing people and another one is developing people that we talk about. In other words, personnel management was seen as a part of the problem, but human resource management is seen as the part of the solution. This is what an Indian author called Devanand had to say. Now, HRM can be a major contributor to the success of our enterprises because it is a key position to affect customers, because results and ultimately shareholders value too. We should not forget that HRM is one integrated part of management that deals with people directly, and it is also for people. In other words, HRM focuses on fulfillment of internal customer needs, which can then help the organization to satisfy the needs of the external customers. And the internal customers are, of course, the employees of the organization. Now, this globalization gave birth to global village. What is a global village? The global village is a term that reflects the state of business in our world, that is the rise of multinational, transnational corporations, and that has placed new requirements on human resource management. For example, human resource management must ensure that appropriate mix of employee in terms of knowledge, skill, and cultural adaptability are available to handle global assignments. In order for human resources to meet this goal, they must train individuals to meet the challenges of the global village. Right? Now, global village, as we know, repeat, I don't know. Yeah. So, another thing that we have in the concept of global village, the second thing is that training has to be done. Training in what? Training in language. First of all, there must be means for these workers to gain a working knowledge of the language of the country in which they will work under. The language cannot, understanding of the language cannot be overstated. There have been too many examples of embarrassing situations, and most business lost businesses because executives or lower level managers were unprepared, and therefore product names or marketing strategies have translated poorly in some foreign countries. Accordingly, before any organization sends any employee overseas, human resource should ensure that the employee can handle the language. Language requirements are also going to extend into communication programs for employees. When they go abroad, for instance, searching for people with specific skills, we need to bring into the organization someone who speaks very little English. Right? Accordingly, we will be required to assist these individuals in terms of English language as a foreign language. Similarly, we will also see that English is not the only thing. What about French language? What about Italian language? What about other languages which are there? So what we find that language has been playing an important role as far as these global villages concerned. Now, language doesn't only mean knowing a language. Even if you do not know, you have got to speak in the accent of people of that particular region. Right? So if you look at English being spoken in Great Britain itself, so if you are working in London, which English the Londoners speak normally? Anybody? Masood? Is Masood there? Yeah. Which English they are speaking? No. What is classic language London accent? No. Sir, Masood Saab, they mostly speak Cockney. Right? They eat up the half the words. All right? Now, if you talk about somebody who is working in and around Oxford and Cambridge area, or in the universities of Oxford and Cambridge, which language do they speak? They speak Victorian English, which is the real English that we talk about. You move a little bit towards Merseyside. Which side in England is called Merseyside? Any idea of geography of England? Have you heard of Liverpool, Manchester? Have you heard of Manchester? See, Manchester and yeah, football clubs are there, but it is before the football clubs. Manchester is known as the cotton textile capital of the world, because the industrial revolution, when it started, the cotton textiles were first established in the area of Manchester. Today, of course, you have got only the museums. Most of the textile machines are in the museums of Manchester today. So if you happen to see those museums in and around Manchester University and Manchester Business School, which is little away from the football club of Manchester, or which is slightly away from the famous cricket ground that they have, right? So it was because of that capital of, textile capital of the world, that lots of people were taken from the colonies to inhabit the place and work in the factories. And today, if you look at Manchester city as such, city area of Manchester, and the suburbs of Manchester, what would be the population of the non-whites in that particular city? Any idea? 58%. There are only 42% whites. So whites are in minority. Further, if you see that since they are in minority, the mayor of Manchester, even today, he hails from India, from a small place called Badh in Bihar. The member of parliament, the two members of parliament from Manchester, are also non-whites. So that is what is there. But what do they speak? They speak more Indian accent English than the British English that you talk about. For that matter, if you go to Liverpool or other areas, their English is entirely different. The accent is different. English remains there. The accent has eaten up everything. And if you go to Wales or if you go to Ireland, their English is entirely different. They do not speak English. It's Welsh and it is Irish. Now, if you go to France, they speak French. They don't speak English. And even if you want to speak English, they would answer in French. Go to Italy, or Italians coming to London for business, they speak Italian. And if you don't understand, they will speak English in Italian accent. Now, if you need to interact with them, you will need to adopt the English, the accent of the Italians. So, the Italians speak from the tip of the tongue. All right. The English that they speak is from the tip of the tongue. So they don't have tip and they don't have tongue. They have tip and tongue. The American, of course, speak from the throats, the epiglottis that Shah Rukh Khan taught you. My name is Khan, right? And if you look at the British, they speak from the whole mouth. But most often, if you talk about, it is going to be slightly softer English as far as you talk about the Victorian English is concerned. The Victorians speak very, very soft. They are very, very polite in terms of their communication. Okay. So if you are having to learn language, you need to also learn the accent and interact with people accordingly. Similarly comes the role of culture. You also need to come role of the culture, learn when you are going to different places. See, in Western world, if you have got to greet even a female employee, normally in the lighter vein, they are being greeted as hi honey or hi handsome, either way, right? Or they will, shake hands. There is no compulsion. No namaskar is there by folding hands. Or, even franker people would, touch each other's cheek with the cheek. So that is also there. Rubbing the cheek is also there for greeting them if you have got slightly more intense relations with them. But if you do the same thing in India, you will have a map of India on your face, my dear. So if you learn that culture of working in the West and come back to India, forget about everything before you disembark on IGI or the Shivaji Airport of Mumbai or any other airports in India, and be absolutely Indian. Moreover, in today's time, the folded hand is much better than any other gesture that you can do. So culture also, or dressing within the culture, is also to be done as to what are you going to wear in terms of culture. So what we find is that as we progress, the culture becomes very, very important for the organization in the global village. And therefore, what we find that the global village requires people to learn new language and learn new culture. There is one more thing that you need to do. Every organization must have a plan for these employees who are sent abroad after learning the language, after learning the culture, to get repatriated in India when they are coming from abroad. Because repatriation programs are not there in Indian organizations even today. Only few organizations having repatriation program. Expatriation is of course there, as we said, in terms of training in language and culture. But repatriation is required for these people so that they can be brought down to the ground. Now there are some outdated assumptions in most organizations today. The competitive environment is stable is an outdated assumption. There is a control on product introduction, and there is no pressure of innovation and development or increasing the manufacturing cycle. We also find that jobs are well defined and slow to change with clear relationship to other such jobs in the career ladder. This is also an outdated assumption. The third outdated assumption is that employment relationships are long-term, that is warm to term, and psychological contracts and exchanges, long-term security, and gradual advancement for employee loyalty and sacrifice is an old assumption, outdated. Workforce are relatively homogeneous male, outdated. Most families are one paycheck families, outdated. Organizations are made up of functional silos, is also an outdated assumption, right? So what is the assumption today? These are not there. If you look at, I'll start from the last one. Organizations are made up of functional silos. Answer is no. Organizations are considered as a system, and all other departments are the subsystems of the organization. And the definition of system is that it works in tandem to achieve the predetermined objective. And therefore, they have got to work together. They have got to work in coordination. And if they have to work in coordination, they cannot be made up of functional silos. Most families are one paycheck family. Wrong, because today we have got dual career. If there are 5 people in the family, all 5 are earning in a family, my dear, in certain cases. If not 5, almost all male members are earning, if not the female members. And in cases, the new entrant to the family, new entrant as female members, they are all earning members. So therefore, one paycheck family, and their domination as the head of the family is no longer there. Family has also deteriorated in terms of joint family, I'm talking about, to nuclear families. and therefore they are all are earning separately. The workforces are relatively homogeneous and male? No. There are a large number of female members now. Even in your class, the number of female members are as large as the male members. And all of them are not going to stay back home and look after their family, become a home lady. Majority of them are going to work in the organizations or have their own businesses or anything of that sort. That started long back, and it is still there. So during the 80s, there were reservations called whips, women in public sector demanding 20% reservations, or colleges, medical colleges having 20% reservations. The reservation has been done away with because it was found soon that more than 50% of the registrations in the professional courses, like medical, were from the females, and therefore they said do away with it, that they were having reservations 20%, and their qualifying were different. So they said no more reservation, you qualify on merit and get into the profession. Same is the condition of engineering and management courses now. Psychological contracts and long-term security is not there. There is no security. Job hopping is the order of the day. You work more, you get more. There is nothing like loyalty, that 2 generations working or 3 generations working for the same organization. Relationships are no longer womb to tomb, that you join the organization once and you continue to work for the organization till you are dead. No, it is not there. It is outdated. Changes, of course, you cannot survive without change. And we say that competition is very, very intense in terms of organization, right? Thank you very much for today. We are going to meet on Monday. But please do one thing. Do send me a message at around 3:25 that you are ready to join. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Ah. Well. Yes, dear. First, you have got to satisfy the internal customers, then the external customers, I said. Right? Because those working in your organization are also your customers, my dear. And that is what they are basically. See, if you remember Gandhi, in 1922, when there was a strike in Ahmedabad textile mills, and he was called to negotiate on behalf of the two parties. So he said that the employers are the trustees, and what about the employees? They are the co-partners, right? Later on, we find that organizations started issuing shares to their employees, right? They are also buying the product of the organization. I'm not talking in that terms, saying that if they are working for you, they are your customers. All right? Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, dear. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.